Project for today is going to be a leaf vacuum that I've got out back that I'm pretty sure it needs an engine. We're going to get this John Deere 265 going and drive out back and pull it up to the shop. Well, here it is. I'm a little bit nervous. There's going to be bees inside of this thing. It's been sitting here for about a year and I haven't really touched it at all. Looks like I think I brought a hitch pin with me we can hook it up with, but we'll move it a little bit and see if we hear any buzzing from bees. I don't hear anything. We'll get it pulled out of here a little bit and then pop the back open. I'll get it hooked up. Thought I had a hitch pin with me, but all I have is that bolt, but that'll work just to get it back to the shop. I got it pulled up here in the shade. We'll pop the back off. Hopefully I won't get any critters running out of here. I don't have any bee spray, but I got a can of carburetor cleaner. That usually works okay, you just don't get the longer spray. We've got some grass in here still, but I don't see any bees nests. That's kind of surprising. They've been really bad this year. I'm gonna clean some of this grass out of here before I bring it in the shop, and then we'll get started. Well, I got it in the shop. It's got pretty much no compression at all. It's got the plug in it still, and there's pretty much no resistance pulling it over. So I'll tear into that one a little bit. We'll see if it maybe just has a stuck valve or something, but I'm guessing it was something worse than that. But I do have these two engines here. This one is missing the air cleaner assembly and stuff. This one actually seemed like it was a little bit better. It had good compression pulling it over and stuff, but I'm sure we'll have to go through the fuel system and everything on it. But I would rather just see if we get this one going, so I think I'll pull the spark plug out of it and see, make sure it doesn't have a broken rod or anything, make sure the piston's moving, and then we'll pull the valve cover off if that's okay and see if the valves are moving. I'll get you in a stand and we'll get started. We'll pull the spark plug out of it first. It doesn't look too bad. The piston's still moving up and down. So we'll pull that valve cover off. Let's see what we see under there. This is just 4 8mm bolts. And I got this breather tube. Looks like the valves are moving okay. Got a little bit of compression. Let's throw a compression tester in there and see what's going on. I'll give her a few pulls and see what we get. And we're not getting much of anything. So I'm thinking we must have a broke valve or something. I did pull the air cleaner off to do that. It makes a little bit of difference if you make sure you're wide open throttle and the engine can get as much air as it can when you're doing a compression test, but it's not too much of a difference. It's maybe 5% or something like that. But I don't know if we might have a blown head gasket or just a broken valve or something. These do have an automatic decompression, but you still should get, we'll probably, even if we got 40, I would have said we were close to having it do something, but I'm thinking we got something else more major going on. I'll throw a leak down tester on it and see if we can diagnose it that way. So I'm going to do a leak down test on it, see if we got a valve or something that's leaking. If you haven't seen any of the videos where I used this before, basically just we're putting air pressure into the cylinder with it at top dead center. And then we watch the difference between the two gauges. So this gauge is how much air pressure I'm putting in, and then this will show what it equalizes to in the cylinder. I'm going to go up to like 50. It actually doesn't seem like it's leaking too bad, other than leaking out through the rings, but we're at 50 psi and it's still holding pretty evenly on the two gauges. If you have a big discrepancy, like if I was putting 50 in on this side and we had 25 on that side, that'd be like 50% leakage. That's a sign of a bad engine, there's something wrong with it. So I don't know if our valves are out of adjustment, so that decompression is putting too much, or releasing too much of the compression, or what we got going on. Because it's not leaking that bad. I'll crank it up to 80. See? Yeah, it's holding pretty steady, 80 on both gauges. So that's a good sign. I don't really know what we have going on then, unless we have something wrong with that decompression in the cam. So I'm going to adjust the valves. They seem like they're too tight. So if we got a 6/1000 feeler gauge here and I can't get it underneath. I'm not sure what exactly the valves are supposed to be on this one, but usually 6/1000 is a safe bet on most things. So I'm going to adjust them both, but what happens is that automatic decompression, it clicks the valve just down just a hair right before top dead center, but if that's opening too far, if this is too much of a tight fit, that's going to end up releasing like all the compression and it will make it not run. I gotta grab another wrench for that. So what we want to do is get our feeler gauge down in here. And just do it till there's a slight amount of drag. Sometimes you can do it by just tightening this outer one, but that wants to turn the whole thing to tighten it, so I'll have to hold it with the two wrenches. But that feels pretty good. We can do this without turning that inner one. The inner one is what changes your clearance. Oh, but then our bolt underneath came loose. So I should have held that nut underneath when I busted it loose, because then I ended up taking the whole stud loose. There's a nut underneath this rocker, so I'll take that off. But that'll give us a chance to inspect the top of the valve here. There's a little shim on top here, but then there's the nut there that we need to tighten. It's bigger than that one. Tighten that down. And throw this back on. Get our feeler gauge back in here. See if we're still at. Oh, it moved a little bit. They're pretty touchy. You can just move it a hair and it'll end up being too tight. That's pretty close. There we go. Just a little bit of drag on it. And we'll do the other side. You can keep the feeler gauge in there, sometimes it helps, but you almost need 3 hands to do that on these ones. It's a little too tight also. There we go. We'll try that. We'll do another compression test and see what happens now. We'll pull it over again and see what happens. We're still only at like 20. I don't know if that's gonna get us to run or not. You might have a broken ring or something like that. But you can kind of see, if I pull it over, you'll see that snap or hear it. Actually, it's not doing it quite as much now. So it's probably not going to do anything, but just for the heck of it, I'm gonna throw a little bit of gas in there in the carburetor and see if it'll fire. What I'm thinking is there's something wrong with that cam, so it's actually out of time, so the valves are opening at the wrong time. But we'll see if it backfires on us or anything. Don't do anything at all. Well, it actually fired up. That's kind of strange. I don't know if that decompression is just that good. We did up the compression. So I did try this when I first bought it and it didn't do anything when I put some fuel in there. So I'll try it one more time. It sounded okay. Well, that might have been way too much. gave it too much, flooded it. Actually, it doesn't sound too bad. Maybe I will try to get this thing going. We might have fixed it by adjusting those valves like that. I'll have to tear into that carburetor, and the gas tank looks awful. It's really rusted up, so I'll have to swap the gas tank on it too. You can see in the tank here, it's just all rusted and full of grime. And it really stinks like old gas. I think I'll pull that carburetor off of there, and we'll pull that fuel tank off and then go from there. So I'll pull this carburetor off of here. By the looks of the tank, I'm sure the carburetor needs some attention. So that choke piece comes off of there. That's one piece that gets lost a lot of the time. I have to grab a pliers for that. I'll get this fuel line off of here. Oh yeah, that's good and rusty there. And that comes off like that. And I got that off of there. There's a gasket up here. We'll set up there. The other gasket stayed on the intake side there. Then we'll pop this tank off. I'm hoping I have, it looks like it's kind of like a Honda clone. So I'm thinking that I have a white Honda tank I could put on there. Won't match the color scheme, but that one's almost too far gone to really do anything with. That one, and then two back there are 10 millimeter. That fuel line has to come up through. I think I gotta take that clamp all the way off the fuel line. The only problem I'm gonna have with the Honda tank is those have a small, like 3/16 fuel line, and this has a regular 1/4 inch line. We might be able to thread that piece into the Honda tank though. Looks like we've got some creative wiring under here too that was probably causing issues. The wire is worn through here because it was just wire nutted under for the kill switch, so I'll have to repair that. I'm sure that was killing the engine. That should be tucked down in there, but with this you couldn't, so I'll put a butt splice in there and heat shrink on it to cover that bare wire. So I found this Honda tank that's clean inside that I had on a parts engine, and that fits on there pretty good. So I think I'll end up using that. The bolts lined up and everything, so this is pretty much just the Briggs and Stratton version of a Honda clone. So that's a good sign, because that'll make it a lot easier than trying to clean out that other tank. So now we'll continue on trying to clean that carburetor out. I'll pull this float bowl off of here first. It doesn't look too bad. That looks pretty terrible though. That's all rust. This is kind of a little sediment bowl. I couldn't get the pin out for the float, so I figured I'd take, yeah, that is some nasty brown stuff in there. I don't even think you could call that gas. And the needle and stuff looks pretty good. I think it was just from sitting out in the elements. It got water and stuff in there. Pull that gasket off and go dump that. I have this float bowl is just about shot. It's rusted dang near all the way through. So I had this off of a parts carburetor. So I'm gonna throw that on there, but I'm gonna continue tearing this apart the rest of the way. We'll see if we can get that main jet out of the center. I don't have too high hopes for that though. Well, it did come loose. There, it came out of there. So we've got the Ventura here, or Venturi, and the main jet. We'll throw those in the parts water, or the ultrasonic cleaner. I'll get this gasket out of here. And the last thing is this low speed jet up on top. That just pull that idle adjustment out, and then that just pops up out of there. There's a hole in the bottom of that, and then through the side. And there's a gasket around it here that you can tell that one was busted. So those are kind of deteriorated. I'll replace that. We'll stab a tiny little piece of wire through here. Make sure that's clear. This is just like piano wire or guitar string, and then you can kind of fray it on the ends and use the tiny little pieces to go through small holes like that. And we'll get that cooking in the ultrasonic cleaner, and then I'll bring you back when I'm getting it cleaned up. Well, I got the carburetor put back together, got the new float bowl on there, and quite the improvement off of that one. And I cleaned out all the orifices and everything, so this one hopefully is good to go. We'll go throw it back on there and then get that gas tank figured out. Slide that on there like that, get it part way, and you're able to put that throttle linkage back in and the little spring like that. We'll leave it loose so we can get that gas line on there. It kind of tucked under here, but I forgot about this wire we have to fix here in the meantime, so we'll get that done before we mess with that gas tank. Wire nuts are pretty much never what you want to use on like a small engine application or automotive. Those are more for like home wiring and stuff. I don't really ever use them on stuff like this. Looks like they used a piece of solid core wire for that kill wire here. I'll have to snip some of that off. I'll cut that off and then we'll get our butt connector on. I'll snip quite a bit of that off. This is a heat shrink butt connector. I'll crush that down. I'll get it on this side. They don't work the greatest on that solid core wire, but just for a kill switch that'll work fine. And I just got this little micro torch, butane torch for melting the heat shrink. I'll let that cool off and put that back down in place, and then we'll move on with the gas tank. So I pulled the fuel nipple out of this Honda tank because that's a 3/16 line, and the one out of the Briggs was 1/4 inch. So that actually does thread in here. So we'll thread that in and tighten it down, and then we'll be able to, it's a little bit different. It was, the fuel outlet is here, or the other one was back here. So we're gonna have to cut the fuel line a little shorter. I'm hoping it still fits in there. So we got the fuel line cut shorter. It's gonna be a little tough to get in here to put all this together. It's gonna be hard to get the camera, and I'll probably just shut it off and show you when I'm done. So what I'm gonna do here is I put the fuel line on the tank, and then we'll fish it through down to the carburetor. So it's too tight of a space really to try to fish it through there and then hook it to the tank. This tank was never really designed to use that big of a fuel line where the outlet is. It's kind of a tight space. The other tank was a lot easier to get it through with it towards the back like that. Now I'm having trouble getting it started down in these. Oh, there, I got it. And then we'll put the fuel line on the carb side. I gotta get my clamp on there. Go on there a little bit farther. There, now it can be pushed up without kinking. There, that should work. We'll get that stuff bolted back up. We don't want to forget our gasket for the air cleaner side. Put that on. Fuel's on that way. I'll get the tank bolted down, and then we'll get the air cleaner bolted back up, and we'll be able to give it a try. Get these bolts in the back here. I think this nut might be messed up. Try this one. And make sure we don't forget our choke. The lever here, if you forget that, you end up having to take this back off. We're one nut short, so I'm putting a new one on there. tight, and then there's one more up here. Put that breather hose back on, and the spark plug wire. And we can throw some gas in it and see if it'll fire up. Well, we'll give her a few pulls and see if it'll fire off for us. Well, that runs really nice. I'm kind of shocked. I never have seen one where that compression releases that much compression that it would act like it has almost zero compression. We did get it up to like 25 psi by adjusting the valves. I guess that was enough to get it started, and then once that decompression, the centrifugal force turning on the cam will actually disengage that decompression valve, and it'll let it have its full compression. But that's kind of an odd one. It doesn't smoke or anything, so I think this is a pretty good engine yet. I'm gonna change the oil on it, and then maybe we'll get it outside and see if we can suck up some leaves. So we could just pull this plug out and drain the oil, but it's gonna make kind of a mess running down over everything and stuff. So what I'm gonna do is just pull the fill, and then I'll lean it down and use this suction or oil extractor to suck the oil out of it. I've used it on the channel a few times, but if you haven't seen it, that's what it is. I just got it off eBay. It was like 130 bucks or something like that, but it works really good for wood splitters and push mowers and stuff that don't have a drain plug, or even stuff like this that it's just difficult to drain it without making a mess. So we'll get that in there and suck the oil out. That oil is really milky. It must have had some water in it, and it's kind of over full. Set it down like that. You can see in the hose how milky that oil is. When I got the oil topped off, I just use a 30 weight oil in them. These small engines, a 30 weight oil seems to work the best. It doesn't seem to break down with the heat. These run at a pretty high temperature, so it looks like our on-off switch is a little bit sticky. Oh, there it goes. It must have just had a little bit of rust in it or something. But yeah, it held about a half quart of 30 weight oil, so that's good to go. We'll get it hooked up. I don't have a mower here currently to hook it right to the deck to do the suction off the deck, but I can just do it handheld. I don't have it has this piece here that goes on the lawnmower deck, but then I see there's another piece. I don't know if that's inside that piece or not, so I'll have to check, see if I have that, and then we can just do it by hand and vacuum up some leaves. Don't really have too many leaves to suck up yet. It's early in the fall yet, so there's not a ton of them, but this is mainly meant to go on a riding mower or something, but I just want to test out, see what the vacuum is like on it. So I got that hose all hooked up to it, and we'll fire it up again. Turn the gas back on. That works pretty good. That had a lot of suction. You can see the spot, it just sucked the leaves clean there. It would be a lot handier if it had the little handheld part of it, but like I said, that part's made to go on a riding mower. It hooks to the deck, and then you use the kind of double the suction with the deck and that, so it's a pretty good unit. You can pull the back here off again, make sure it all flew into there. Oh yeah, not too many of them, but it does kind of mulch them up too as it sucks them up. I think if you were going to use it quite a bit, these pins down here would get kind of annoying to have to take in and out to dump it, but you could probably do it quite a big yard before you have to dump it, unless your leaves are really thick. Well, this one is a prime example of why you don't take the customer's word on what they think is wrong with something, and just do all the checks you should do when you're diagnosing an engine. Do a compression test on it and test the spark and go through the fuel system, because you never really know what it's actually going to end up being for the problem. But that's going to do it for this one. If you like this sort of thing, like the videos and subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you on the next one.